Political parties can spend unlimited amounts of money directly supporting their own candidates. In a 6-3 decision, what was once capped is now wide open. The ruling means a single donor can now funnel over $500,000 to a candidate through a party committee, sidestepping the contribution limits that have governed campaigns for decades. The decision has ignited fierce debate about whether this protects free speech or opens the door to corruption. 9 Robes uses non-partisan, everyday language to focus on the facts of what the Supreme Court is saying. Here, you'll find clear, concise summaries of every Supreme Court opinion, stripped of legalese and clickbait headlines. Each post breaks down the facts, explains the court's reasoning, and highlights the crucial details that often go unnoticed. It's not just about what the court decided, it's about why those decisions matter, to give you a deeper understanding of the cases that define our nation's legal landscape. These summaries are generated by AI. Be careful and consult reputable sources when in doubt. For more than 2 decades, federal law capped how much a political party could spend when working directly with its own candidates. These caps ranged from about $65,000 for a House race to over $32 million for a presidential race. The Supreme Court had upheld these limits back in 2001. A 6-justice majority overturned that decision, saying the spending caps violate the First Amendment right to free speech. The attorneys challenging the law made a straightforward argument. The spending limits restrict political speech without good reason. They pointed out that existing rules already prevent corruption. Donors cannot secretly direct money to specific candidates. Campaigns must disclose who gives them money. Federal bribery laws are on the books, and 28 states have no coordinated spending limits at all, with no sign of increased corruption. The government's own lawyer agreed. She conceded that the legal reasoning behind the 2001 decision no longer held up under current Supreme Court precedent. Justice Kavanaugh's majority opinion rested on 3 key findings. First, the court had the power to hear the case. The challengers had a real legal dispute worth deciding. Second, the spending limits fail a demanding legal test. Any restriction on political spending must be necessary, proportionate, and narrowly tailored to prevent a real problem. The court examined 4 possible justifications. Reducing overall campaign spending is not a valid reason. Preventing parties from influencing their own candidates makes no sense because parties and candidates are naturally aligned. Preventing donors from gaining influence was already rejected in a prior case. The only remaining justification was preventing donors from routing money around base contribution limits through parties. But the court found that 3 existing safeguards already address that concern. Base contribution limits themselves, rules against earmarking donations to specific candidates, and disclosure requirements. Adding a 4th layer of spending limits goes too far and unnecessarily silences political speech. The court also noted that most states function fine without these limits. Third, the court formally overruled the 2001 decision, calling it outdated. The legal reasoning that supported it had been undermined by subsequent rulings. Importantly, the ruling applies only to political parties. The court left in place limits on spending by outside groups and individuals. Justice Kagan's dissent, joined by 2 other justices, focused on joint fundraising committees that now becomes far more powerful. In practice, a donor writes 1 check for over $550,000 to a committee that includes a candidate's campaign, the national party, and state party committees. That money flows quickly through the state parties back to the national committee, which then pays the candidate's bills directly. Under the new ruling, Kagan wrote, the party becomes an alternative bank account for the campaign. Kagan's sharpest criticism targeted the majority's faith in earmarking rules as a safeguard. When a donor gives $550,000 to something called the John Smith Victory Fund, the donor does not need to say anything about where the money should go. The committee's name itself routes the money to the candidate. No earmarking violation occurs. A candidate could even tell a donor to give to the Victory Fund in exchange for a political favor, and the earmarking rules would not catch it. Kagan also criticized the majority for relying on disclosure alone to prevent corruption. She noted that corruption can exist even when everyone knows who gave what. The practical impact is significant. Before this ruling, a donor could contribute roughly $7,000 directly to a candidate. But through a joint fundraising committee, that same donor could now give over $550,000, with most of it flowing back to the candidate through the party. The dissent argues this effectively erases the base contribution limit. The majority responds that joint fundraising is simply a tool for collective fundraising, not a workaround. The ruling applies one critical detail only to political parties. The court left untouched the limits on spending by outside groups and individuals. Whether that line will hold remains unclear. Justice Kagan pressed this point at oral arguments, and the majority did not fully answer it. This ruling heavily impacts super PACs by diminishing their monopoly on unlimited, large-scale campaign spending. Official party committees direct the spending of the campaigns. The candidate is accountable for the spending and any corruption found. This decision represents a major victory for those who view campaign spending as protected speech. It represents a major defeat for those who see contribution limits as essential guardrails against corruption. The court's majority believes existing safeguards are sufficient. The dissent believes those safeguards have gaping holes. Find us online at 9robes.ai. That's the number, 9robes.ai. Like and share this podcast with friends that like to be informed. 9 Robes provides AI summaries of U.S. Supreme Court cases. AI makes mistakes. People make mistakes too. We genuinely do our best to provide you with the most accurate summaries, but our best sometimes includes errors.